Welcome back, guys, for the third installment of the Not So Difficult, Uncomfortable Conversation. As you know, I have my brother from another mother, Alex Todd. You guys will hear me refer to him as AT. And we have a guest today, a gentleman by the name of Perry Hunter. Now, Perry, listen, for a lot of you guys that watch this, there's a couple things I want to make clear because I think it matters to provide context with the subject matter we're talking about and with the things that we're talking about. Perry is from Indiana, so we're not going to hold that against him at all. He claims to know a lot about basketball, so we're not going to, we'll stay off that subject as well. But in all seriousness, tonight I feel like it's something that is really, really special in the next stage of this, because for us, I think it's important that we hit on some certain topics and we start addressing some certain topics. And AT and I have went back and forth a lot on some different things. And hey, should we talk about this? Should we talk about that? Racism and kids, I think, is a huge thing. And the one thing that all three of us have in common, outside of none of us having any hair, I actually have hair. I just choose to fit in and not let these guys be uncomfortable. So I have hair. I have hair. But the other thing that we have in common is that we're all dads.
Yeah.
And we've all been dads for a reasonable amount of time now, to where we're not experts, we're not therapists, we're not professional psychologists. So take our advice and our experience is just that. We are the experts in our own story. We are the experts in our own journey. We're the experts at each integral part of that. So I think we jump right out of the gate. Obviously, Perry, welcome here with us.
Thanks for having me.
AT.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna do the super cliche thing to do right now, and that's give the black guy in the room, the courtesy to go first. Right,
40 acres in a meal, man.
We're gonna do things proper here, right? So, but in all reality, I'm doing this because for those early listeners, I actually spent about 20 minutes hitting a lot of people, inviting a lot of people in. So I'm like as many white people as we possibly can, because I'm gonna reiterate this: racism is a white American problem, and we have to get uncomfortable with having these, not so difficult conversations. And so I would like you to first share how racism has affected your kids.
Okay. So, and I'm glad you started with me, because as a minister, I could go on and go on and go on. I wouldn't want to have to sit around and wait to tell you guys my story. I would say this, though, just in the way I was raised, I can start with me first. I had two other brothers, and we were all kind of 1 year apart. Matter of fact, they used to call us step ladders. And we would go to church, they would call us Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But just growing up, and I can't get into their minds, but I can kind of tell you how they feel, because I can tell you how I felt. I grew up in, my father's a pastor, so they would move them in our denomination every 3 to 5 years. But I spent more so my best years, I spent them in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is predominantly a white area. It's on the beach of North Carolina. And the people there, from what I experienced, were really nice. I was a star basketball player, so I don't really know if a lot of the good treatment I received was because I was,
sure,
just a great kid. And I pat myself on the back. But one of the things I did know, and this is how I'm going to tie this into my children, one thing that I did know is that at a younger age, that freshman year, I really had a lot of white friends. But what I noticed is that as we got older, those white friends started to gravitate to more or to other white friends. And it wasn't if they said, oh, you're black, we don't want to hang out with you anymore. But I guess I became less cool as we got older and the cliques start to happen. And I just had a sense that I'm not welcome in that group. So my buddies who had already embraced me in the ninth grade, come 10th and 11th grade, instead of them trying to bring me into a situation where they might get slack for it, they just kind of just slowly stopped talking to me as much.
Yeah.
And when you're in high school, you're not so naive. You start to say, maybe because I'm black, because I hadn't changed. I'm still the funny guy. I'm still the one of the top players in the state. How come you're not really gravitating to me even more, you would think? Because now all of a sudden the black folks are like, yo, he's a star. And now my white friends kind of push back. And I would say that with my children, I've noticed the same thing when they were in junior high. And just for transparency, I have 4 children. I have a son who's 18. He has a twin who's 18. And I have a daughter who is 19. She's in college. And then a daughter who is 15. What I've noticed, and a lot of this has to do with just kind of the places we've lived. We've been middle class most of our lives, or most of my adult life. So we've kind of been in white neighborhoods. And what I've noticed is that coming up, my kids have kind of gravitated to the white music. They kind of gravitated to the white dress, the white shoes. They kind of gravitated to things that, we would say, oh, a white person will wear that or do that. They kind of gravitate to that. And with that being said, they more gravitated to that because the surroundings was white.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as they got older, I started to see them, even with their best friends that live next door, they stopped hanging out as much with them and start to get more African-American friends and, even some, I would say brown friends, Spanish friends. And I don't know if it was their preference to start hanging out with more browner friends, but I have an idea just looking at my experience that it was the friends who kind of just get to high school and you want to eat lunch today? No, I have something to do. That type of thing. And you see them on the other side of the cafeteria eating with other friends. I do believe that has been a big difference in why they went the same route as me and having a different set of friends as they've gotten older.
Okay. So now there's the second part to that question. Then Perry, I'll ask you the same 2 questions.
Okay.
So what has the current events that have happened over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks? Because I think we can all probably agree something definitely is different about what's happening. Something there's a different feeling in the air. Not that any of the violence or the murders or the racism that have happened in the past, not that they're any less significant.
Mm-hmm.
The world has a weird way of its own timing, and people line up, and those things align. How has it affected? How has that affected your kids?
So interesting enough, I think the last time we had one of these big police shootings or cop killings, or just in general a black person being killed, and it really affects America. And the last time we had one, my kids were a little younger, and so the impact on them, they were more so concerned about what the hottest video was out and what was the hottest song. But now they've gotten older, they're almost out of their teenage years. I think it is affecting them a lot more to where it is now in their face. They got to see it. They have to confront it. And interesting enough, my kids have never been, and I've told my story, I've kind of been middle class and not been that activist. I think you've been more of an activist than me. But I'm starting to see that my kids are asking. Matter of fact, they asked me last week, could they go to the protest in Washington, D.C.? And there was a protest here, and I live out in the suburbs of D.C. area. There was a protest here. They asked me to go to that as well. We did not make it because I'm still concerned about, the COVID virus. And I didn't think we were prepared to actually go and be safe in doing so. but they're asking those questions now. Dad, how do you feel? They're asking the question about how do you feel? What did you see anything growing up? Have you ever been to jail? They're asking me these questions, and I know it's in regards to what's happening. One of the things that I've noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I signed up for TikTok. Do y'all know what TikTok is?
Oh yeah, I got one of those.
You got?
Yeah. I have it, but I've never used it.
How come no one ever told me about TikTok?
Well, because truth be told, AD, we're a little bit of it's not really necessarily for our demographic.
So I'm getting that because the stuff I'm seeing there is really different, and it's almost as if I'm in some type of strip club, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm seeing all types of stuff. I'm not supposed to be here. But anyway, I joined TikTok about 2 weeks ago because I said I want to know what my youngest daughter is so hype about. Because typically when young folks
doing the dances, she always doing the dances. Yeah.
I mean, it's so baby, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, my youngest daughter is hyped about TikTok. So of course, the concerned parent I want to know what you're so hyped about, because if it's something that's illegal, if it's something that leads you to be sold off into some foreign country, all that stuff going on. I need to know what's going on. So
man.
I signed up for TikTok under an alias, guys. My name is I'm Special to You. That's my name. So if you see it, someone on there called I'm Special to You and it's a young person, look, it's me. Anyway, I signed up for TikTok yesterday. Yesterday, no, this is a shame. Yesterday, and we're talking about young folks tonight.
Yep.
And the influence. Yesterday and today, there is one of the trending videos is by a young lady. I got to get her name. She has been identifying kids her age. We're talking about 6th grade through maybe like the 9th and 10th grade. That's where they look. She's been identifying Twitter, TikTok, all of it, same thing. TikTok, sure. Where she has pulled their clips and she's exposing these white young girls, young now.
Racist. Yeah.
And they are going off about slavery and the N-word this, and they're talking about the knee on the neck, and it was shocking to me. I had to look. I was like, is this really true? She's got the pictures, and she's saying someone called the school. You know that the cheerleading coach, I think a few of the girls on cheerleading, and I'm like, boy, we need to have the conversation quick about these young folks, because racism isn't something you're born with. Oh, there's certain things that we have in our DNA. It is something that is learned. It is something that is learned.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Social media is one of those things. It's when I traveled around with CCR, I actually hit on social media. So parents stick around to the end, and I'll actually cover some of the same stuff as well. So Perry, I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah.
How positively, negatively, whatever your story is,
all right,
how did racism affect you as a kid?
Well, I taught, pre-show intro, I said I've been white for 50 years. So I grew up in a town that there were no African Americans. If there were, they were in and out. They weren't there very long. Only 20 miles from Louisville, Kentucky. Didn't see a lot of black people, and
that's an inside joke with me and AT. So
didn't see a lot of black people, but I can remember my dad. He worked at Naval Ordnance in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was around black people. And affirmative action was really strong. This was the 1970s, so there were some people that he felt like should have gotten jobs that black people got. Which, a little kid listening, it was because he thought they were black. And my dad would tell these stories, and I can remember when he would be complaining, just kind of getting things off his chest. But when he would finish with the story talking to my mom, he would always turn around and look at me and say, black people are not bad, Perry. This has nothing to do with the color of their skin. And, so I could have taken some negative things out of it. I'm sure he said other things too. But I just remember that he would turn and reinforce that this has nothing to do with race. And, looking at that now, I appreciate that because I could have gotten some bad thoughts. Like you said, it's learned, Alex, and I could have gotten some bad thoughts. But, I was not around black people until I worked at UPS a lot and in Louisville. So racism, it was one of those things where, like I said earlier, I listened to Public Enemy, to the lyrics. I read the books. I read Malcolm X's autobiography. I read these things. I knew about Dr. King, but there's one thing to read about it, and there's another thing to feel it. And I never really felt it because I wasn't around black people, and I was also never around black people when they were being treated badly. Yeah. So it was kind of a weird thing. It was like one of those things you knew about, but it was another world. It was another life.
When did you, Perry, if you don't mind, when did you first realize, like, when did you first have a black friend?
Oh, it was when I was at UPS. So I was probably 20, 21 years old, 22. And, you're talking about African-American and black, and we were talking about that before the pre-show. There's a story at UPS where I'm a UPS, and there's this place called the Earreg department, and there's like 10 people working there. And a black guy walks up to me. There's only one black guy working at the Earreg area. All right. There's 9 white guys and 1 black guy. This guy comes up to me and he said, he's a black guy. He says, "Hey, I need, Joe or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, he's the third one on okay, now he's the second one on that." He goes, "You talking about the black dude?" And I was like, "Yeah, the black guy." Just say black guy. It's one of those things where I was trying not to be racist. Mm-hmm. And Shane, you and I've talked about this, that sometimes I wonder if by trying not to be racist, it is racist.
Yeah. Well, again, and I think that matters. Obviously, I can't speak for black people and how they receive it, but I can tell you that intent matters.
Right.
Tone matters, context matters. Like there's a lot. Like I said, AT and I will sit. If AT and I were to grab some wings and sit and watch football on a Sunday and sit there and watch the commercials and tell stories and different things, he and I are both going to crack jokes on white people and black people. Right. But if outside people were to hear that and not understand or not have the context, they may hear me say something that would be like, "Who is this guy? Like, what is he like? How can he speak on that?"
Yeah, I've got 2 kids, 15-year-old daughter, 12-year-old son, and they both go to a school that is predominantly white, but they do have black friends. And some of these, they go and hang out. They have way more black friends at an earlier age than I did. And to them, it's not even a big deal. But I have 2 white kids. So in the midst of, the second part of your question, in the midst of all this stuff, they see it on the news, but then they go about living their life in a nice upper middle class society and don't have to deal with the negatives of it. And I've tried to get them to be in situations with people of color more by taking them on little trips, mission trips, doing basketball camps, different things like that, because I don't want it to be as shocking to their system as it was for me.
I feel like that could be one of Dave Chappelle's segments, where we, rent a white, like you rent the white guy to come over, or the kid to come over to hang out, to kind of let them get used to how it is that aren't around. So,
and here's the thing is, it's just like a friend and get to know a friend, a black friend is really like trying to get to know that pretty woman. And I'm married now, but that pretty woman that I have to say that my wife watches it. I'm gonna be in trouble. I might not eat.
Good. That's good.
I do want to eat, but no, getting to know, and this is the thing I think is great about this show, is that for the white person, they get to see that a black person can literally have some of the same thoughts that they have. Right. On the flip side, a black person they see that Shane's probably more blacker than them. So I think that's a good part about the show. But I would say really trying to break the how do I speak to a black friend? I think it's like dating a woman. When you first, I really like her. I don't want to say the wrong thing. The big thing about it is that you're walking around and tiptoeing eggshells, but the fact is you're still walking around on tiptoeing eggshells. You're trying.
Yeah.
Right.
So I give both of you guys, Shane, you were just born black, but Pierre, I give you like a pat on the back that even though it's awkward. It was awkward when you first started. The fact that you just try it.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Try
and what you're saying is so true. I think a lot of white people really want to have conversations, but they're afraid to say something that's uninformed or ignorant or racist. And they're not racist, but they don't know what is and what isn't. Kind of like African-American and Black. What do I say here?
Yeah.
I went on a mission trip with Athletes in Action to Kenya a couple of years ago, and the team was half Black and half white. So we're sitting down, and there's one of these situations going on in the States, and we're deciding, the people in charge decide that we're going to sit down and we're going to have a race discussion. Well, we had a couple African-American, couple Black people who were very vocal, and no white person would say anything. So I was like, here, I'll say it. I go, everybody in here wants to talk, but we're scared to say the wrong thing. And one of the black woman said, well, that's just stupid. And I went, and that's why no one was saying anything. And I'm not trying to say that, it's Black people's fault that there's no discussion, but I think there are a lot of white people who they genuinely want to understand, but they're afraid to say the wrong thing.
Let's actually address that for a second. So think about what we have. We have 400 years of slavery and oppression and racism and bigotry and all these different things that have happened that have essentially taken two of citizens of that cohabitate the same exact country, right? And it caused us to do this.
Yeah.
Right. So I see you over there.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to talk to me, and I don't know how to talk to you. In a lot of ways, Black and white society operates very much like North Korea and South Korea.
Oh, very much so.
We're
very different.
The same, and we got these demilitarized zones, and like we bump into you at the gas station or the grocery store, but I don't go to the black club, and you're not coming over and hanging out at the white club or what. So there's these things, and it takes both sides, right? So what I mean by that is, and I talked about this last time, I can't tell Black people how to feel. I can't tell you what you got to forgive and all that. But I don't think we're talking about a majority of white people. But if you have a large group, because it's still a large group of people, if you have a large group of people who either are racist, potentially could be racist, or don't know if they're racist, right? If they're there, if we're going to bring them over to the good side, there has to be some forgiveness and acceptance when that communication or that dialogue happens, right? Now, as white people, we got to understand when I say something and it might be out of context, I got to be ready for what bullets might fly my way. Verbal bullets might fly my way, right? You're going to pelt me with a couple because look, but I think it has to happen. And now, AT, maybe you can agree or disagree with me, but I think it has to happen on the other side to where Black people have to say, okay, well, what the hell are you talking about? That might be the reaction, and it's understandable, but then it has to be, well, wait a second. You know what? My bad. Like, I used to have a saying in the car business. Somebody would come to us. They'd be trying to buy a car, and they tell me say, look, you don't judge me by your last salesperson, and I won't judge you by my last customer. And it's gotta be if somebody is willing, if either side, if both sides are willing, but somebody is brave enough to engage in that engagement in that conversation, then at that point, like, and we talk about empathy a lot with this, but there has to be a level of humility and vulnerability to say, you know what, I'm going to listen. If a Black person approaches you and wants to know why you're not speaking out, why you're not saying anything, sorry, you can't get defensive. This is not the world we live in right now.
Well, Shane, and I think to even throw on to that is that somewhere we got to have a little bit of thick skin.
Both sides. Somewhere we got to say, okay, I just got fussed out, and it's not going to destroy my day. It's not going to make me think different about the entire race. I just got fussed out.
I can get fussed out on both sides of the demilitarized zone. I can go.
Yeah.
My wife will fuss me out tonight, and doesn't mean she doesn't love me. It just means I probably said something or did something wrong.
Sure.
But I'm just not going to pick up and say, you know what? She fussed me out. She said some words, and I'm not going to love her no more. I'm not going to talk to her anymore. So I think on both sides, we've got to get to the point. And there's this thing that I know we were fighting. America's fighting over this political correctness thing. And I do believe there are some things that you just shouldn't say. But I do believe that there is still a lot of stuff that can be said, and that's not politically correct, but that we can say, okay, I can take that as you just don't understand or know where I'm at. And I can just take that. And I should be able to say, okay, you know what? I made a mistake. Or hold on, brother or sister. This is my African American or black. Hold on, brother and sister. And you can be white for me to call you brother and sister.
Absolutely.
Hold on,
Absolutely.
That's not correct. Let me tell you how to be able to do it. And vice versa, you can say to me, look, you were a little too loud today. Temper down the temperature. And we should be able on both sides to be able to say, you know what? It's not like everybody on my race is always kind and nice to me.
Sure, absolutely. There's jerks everywhere.
On both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the greatest public speakers I've ever heard talk, she's an author, Brene Brown. And if you guys have never read any of her books, they're great. Easily, she's a superstar. And in that talk, she talked about context of people having an understanding of not just reacting and letting our own internal influence cause us to react to someone else. And she tells two stories, and I'll zip through them real quick to give context. One, she was in a meeting. She's having a big meeting. She's talking about some things. She's going over some things. And one of the guys sitting there, and he's just sitting at the meeting, and he's shaking his head and flipping through his phone and, doing all this stuff. Well, the meeting gets out. In her mind, she's already fired the guy because she's like, this is really important. You're not engaged. It's not important to you. And so she walks out the meeting. They walk out. It's over. The meeting walks out, and she stops. And she says, wait a second. And she goes and pulls him aside. And she said, look, I need to talk to you because this is how I'm feeling. This is how I interpreted what you were saying without saying it. And he looked at her and he was like, you know what? I'm so sorry. He's like, today is the first day my wife had to go to work. I had to go to work. We have no babysitters. The first time we've left our kids at home by ourselves. We told them not to hit us, and my kids are hitting me. They've already tore something up. They've already done this. I'm sorry. Like this is what, and that same context can happen or not happen in that. And that matters when we communicate. So all of us, whether it's a husband, wife, friendship, relationship, whatever it is, we all have to be way more understanding of, because let's be honest, guys, look, this is not my first marriage. You guys are on your first, so we don't have that in common.
I'm on two.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't see. Maybe I did know that. So anyway, we all know, like a lot of times when our wives come to us with something and they say, hey, and they start talking about something, what they first start talking about is not actually why they sat down and wanted to have a conversation.
Right.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not.
You're right, brother.
So if us as humans and we live together, like we're married, like we've had kids, we're intimate together, like we're on a personal level, like no other, right? So imagine how uncomfortable that is for a white person or a black person to approach someone of the other color that you don't know much about and to say, hey, I don't even know what, I mean, what do you say? Or, hey, I've been looking to talk to a black person, or maybe it comes off even worse than that. Hey, do you know any blacks I can talk to? Right. Again, it's understanding the context of where this person is coming from.
So let me pivot here, because as you're talking and I'm looking up on the screen, and all of a sudden something just echoes in my brain about what Perry said. This conversation at UPS is a more awkward and rougher conversation because, back to what we're talking about tonight, we're not having these conversations with our kids early on.
Absolutely.
We're not like what Perry is doing, putting them in environments, putting them in situations.
Rent a white.
Look, somebody patent it so we can sell that. But
Rent a white. I'm calling Dave Chappelle. I'm calling
him. Patent it first before you call him. But no, we're not putting our kids in situations so that when they're 19 and 20, so that when they're on the job, so that when they are now in a position where they have to deal or not deal with someone that's, I'm just going to just leave the race part out of it and just say, so that when someone is different from them,
right,
different from them, they can't react. And I believe, I'm going to touch something touchy here. I believe that a big problem of what's going on with our law enforcement, black and white, is that our law enforcement has limited experience with dealing with a different type of person than them, because not just black and white, but they pull over an autistic person.
Right.
Yep.
I just feel like we're not having these conversations, and we're growing up as kids, and all of a sudden we're forced to, because the world is going to force you. And listen, white folks out in
Indiana,
Maine, I'm in Indiana,
Kentucky,
South Dakota. Listen, the way the world is going, the wall will never get built. You're going to have to deal with somebody that's not your color, whether it be you or your kids. People of any type of color, they're coming. And so we've been talking about the last 2 weeks about putting in some work. This is another way we can put in some type of work.
Sure.
We got to talk to these kids, Shane. Here,
absolutely. So I'm gonna share a little bit about how racism affected me as a kid, and then how it maybe has or has not affected my kids, and then I want to dive into a little bit of the conversation. So I actually, there were a lot of things negative about my household. One of those things was not racism. The only time I ever heard the N-word was my grandmother. My mom's mom, she just, I don't know. She passed away before I could ever have a real conversation with her and try to understand why. It did get to the point where I would correct her in a joking, I'm your grandson kind of way of like, you can't, like, what are you doing? Like, Granny, you can't do this. Right. So outside of that, I can remember, everybody was always like, I was never even, I guess it was just kind of there. Like it wasn't we didn't had black coaches in baseball or friends or, kids and friends. And there was, cordial conversation, and it was never an issue. And I remember I was in maybe first or second grade, and I remember coming home and telling the story, and there were 2 kids in my class with the same name. And I was trying to tell my mom about this thing that happened, because it happened, like, it was not like bad, but like it was something you wanted to know as a parent. And she was like, which one? And I was like, the one with the short hair. Well, the white kid had a buzz cut. The black kid had short hair. Right. So she's like, no, she's like, the black one or the white one? And I'm looking at her, and I remember her telling me this story. She was like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean the black one or the white one? Steven or whatever his name was, right? Like this is what happened. And I like, and that has always stood out to me. So, and it was never, I don't know, it was never a part of my childhood wasn't negatively impacted outside of, but for some reason I just inherently knew, like, my parents never sat me down and said, she's just it was just, you just knew. And I think a lot of times when we talk about racism is it's learned or it's taught. It's environmental, like it's So Perry can speak to this, right? Two white guys can speak to this. It's the same environment or the same temperature in a room where there's a bunch of drunk white guys or a bunch of overly boisterous white guys, and the one white guy kind of floats out that off-color joke. And in some rooms it might take off, and in some rooms it doesn't take off, and everybody's kind of looking at him like, man, what the hell are you talking about? Like, so, in that's kind of the same thing. How it's affecting my kids. We teach inclusion and I guess maybe that's why I've learned it. I've never consciously did it. I've had, black friends. I've got friends that, that most people would look at, especially white people who haven't experienced much, much with black people at all. I've got friends who've been to the penitentiary, come over to my house. Like, they look different. They dress very different than what they do, So in these things but it's never been one of those things to where we talk about it. My daughter and I, we actually had a conversation because it came up at dinner time. We don't watch the news in our house. It is never on. I'm not going to pollute my kid's brain with that kind of stuff. It's just my choice. We talk about current events. We talk about certain things, but I make sure that I'm able to control the narrative and the truth to what's out there. And she was like, yeah, she's like, we talked about it and how bad it was in school. And our teachers, you should never not she's actually learned this in school in a little bit, but it did cause me to have a different conversation. And the conversations that we have, I guess, AT, are very similar to what you just mentioned. I've intentionally ingrained in them. We're not going to speak about, like, we don't treat people like us differently than someone. So it doesn't matter what your difference is, right? My daughter, one of the biggest things she loved last year in school was she'd always get done with her work first, and then she would get to go and volunteer and work with the special needs kids and help those. We teach, like you give to others, you do for others. If people are in need, if you see somebody who doesn't have a friend, you go sit with that person. If you see, whatever that is, it's just, and I hate to talk about this publicly because I know people know that I'm different, and I know people know that I carry myself different and I move different in the world. But I guess, like, I'm just trying to share that if you just make it a part of your everyday life, white people, it is easy to avoid. It is easy not to have the conversation. Yes. It's easy because listen, I've got two kids out of high school. I've had to sit down and have the sex talk before. And let me tell you something. There is nothing any more awkward as a parent than sitting down and having the sex talk. You can absolutely sit down and look at them and say, I will absolutely come short of taking your life if I ever find out that you've treated someone who is different from you differently just because they're different. If they treated you wrong or if they've hurt you, like that individual incident, that individual person, you are allowed to have those feelings and those emotions. But you never lump people in just because they're different. And I will take your life if you do that, right? And that's what you should say, right? Like I know, I mean, I'm being a bit facetious with it, but
no, because I've said the same things.
Yeah, it just is. So parents are going to be watching this. I think it's and I'll start it. I think it's sitting down and saying, look, it's obviously age appropriate. I think high school kids need to learn. Well, there's no better way to put this. They need to learn real Black history. I think they need to learn about Jim Crow. I think they need to learn slavery's out there, and you can, like, it is what it is. I think that they need to learn not about what so I'm sure this may be a touchy subject. I don't like Black History Month. Not because I don't want Black history celebrated. It's because it's commercialized, and all anyone here is black or white is all about the the cream of the crop, most successful people who've done this. And you know how many great people who've never invented anything, who have great stories and great things in history?
Like Alex.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got people that hit me and say, was AT really Drake's manager? Yes. Yes, he was. Yes. There's no way, Shane. There's no way you know him. Well, there's a lot you don't know about me in the music business, and maybe AT and I will share some of that one of these days. But like you got to have the conversation. You got to just sit down and say, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm gonna throw this out there because I know I've went on a long rant. I think that you sit down, and the very first conversation is, tell me. There's two things I want you to do as a kid. I want you to tell me the type of people that you don't like. Because now that, as a white parent, that might shake you to your core.
Right.
Because now all of a sudden you're going to start seeing some reflections of yourself.
Yep.
Right. And then I think maybe something to the effect of, give me reasons why you should not like somebody because they're different. Start there. And let them talk. Don't correct them. Don't interject. Just listen. Because the reason I say that, and I hope parents stop everything you're doing and listen to this. The reason that I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but I absolutely know human interaction. The reason I'm saying this is because the first way to fix these things is with yourself.
Yeah.
And if I think all of us live a fairly, I don't want to say old, I'll say old school kind of way. You know, I'm the king of this here castle. Yeah, my wife is the boss and, you know, whatever. But when everybody's scared and everybody's uncomfortable and everybody doesn't know what's going on, they depend on me to guide the ship.
Mercy.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the one that, because our kids look up to us, whether they tell us or not, no matter how much they tell us we're stupid, we're goofy, we're dumb, we don't understand, we're out of touch, we don't know, all of these different things. But when you ask those two questions in that way, they're going to say some things to you that they might as well be looking at you and saying, well, you told me this, and this.
Or I saw you do this.
So that first conversation, it's going to be one of those pills that are real hard. It's a horse pill. It's going to suck, but you got to get it down. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear you guys' opinion, you guys' thoughts. Perry, you can go because I know you may have to cut out here in a little bit. So I'll let you go first.
Oh, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's important. I've said put your kids in. I've got a friend who talks about putting, your kids and make them comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And the more you do that to them, that's like they play sports. They play baseball, basketball, volleyball, lots of different things. And when they're in a game and the game's on the line or it's a big moment, there's some parents can't take it. And, it makes me nervous. But I tell them the more they're in those types of situations, the less of a big deal it is.
Yes.
So if I can get them around people that are different than them, and my kids go to a public school, so there's a lot of different people. But also the conversations, like the other day, Brandon, my son, 12 years old, he just came in from running around the block. And I grabbed him and got him down on the ground. He's already out of breath a little bit, and we're wrestling. And he goes, Dad, I can't breathe. And, I kept playing with him, and he got real upset. Like, he's like, I shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't be saying that right now. And that's, and I'm like, and that went into a conversation. I'm glad you're aware of that, and I'm glad you're aware of what's going on. But right now, we're just wrestling around. It's just you and me. I said, now, if you were saying that to be funny, now we got a problem. It's just, the problem, though, that I've noticed and where I live is that when they saw the guy up in Minneapolis die, people were outraged. Shane and we're talking, and we're like, this is different. There are people upset that were not upset before.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as the violence starts and the riots, those people who were uncomfortable, maybe stepping out and never had before, ran back to their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's not about that. It's about something else. And I can tell you that I've had a lot of conversations with white people through the years about race, and even recently where they don't. When I'm a high school teacher, I teach psychology, sociology, government. And the thing that I try to get across to the students, especially my white students, is that we will never understand what it's like to be black if you're white. All right. It's just like I can't understand what it's like to be a woman. I can't understand what it's like to be Hispanic. So if a large percentage of black people are saying this is a problem, we should at least listen. And so, but you get these people what they're doing is they're judging the black experience on their own experience.
Bingo.
Yeah. And it is, well, I was poor when I was growing up, and I had to work for everything I got. Nobody gave me anything. And the example I always use in class is I live 10 miles from the Ohio River. And I say, okay, we're going to race. Black people and white people are going to race from Sellersburg to the Ohio River. When I say go, only white people can go. And they get about 3 or 4 miles from the bridge. Then you go to the black people. And yeah, they're getting to race, and they're both running the same race, but they're started behind them. And it's really hard for white people to get that, because white people, I think black people do the same thing, but we're talking about racism. I think white people judge the way black people act based on their own experiences. We have so different experiences. It doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire, upper class black person, you still have been called the N-word.
Yep.
And I have never, in fact, if anybody's ever used a racial slur to me, I laughed. I thought it was funny, honky or cracker. It's like, really? That's what you could. Okay.
Those are nice ones.
Yeah. Yeah. The white POS or something like that. It's getting a little personal, but so I just think that is I think first step for white people is to understand that our experiences are very different. Heck, you can go to an AAU tournament and see how different the cultures are, and understand that our experiences are different to get us to this point where we are.
So Perry, before you go, I want to ask one thing.
Don't let them go. Because this is really good, because I think what Perry just did was came in and gave us a perspective that I have been seeing on Facebook all week because people are battling right now on Facebook, guys. It is there's more fighting on Facebook right now between black and white and black and white and white. There's more battling than has ever been done in this country. The Civil War did not have as much battling as what I'm seeing on Facebook right now. And the thing that keeps coming up that Perry just said is about these experiences, but more specifically, that I started the race the same way that you started the race. So how come you can't finish the race if I can finish the race?
Well, see, Shane was talking about slavery. To me, every racial issue that we have today is directly linked back to slavery, because I believe, you talk about systemic this, whatever, poverty is generational. And black people were freed. Okay, you're free. They got nothing. And they became sharecroppers. They went north, and so they
started to build wealth out in Tulsa, and then that didn't work out well.
No, but it's generational. So you can talk about the welfare program in the 1960s and how this is from a historical standpoint. I believe the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I think by taking the father out, the person that makes the money, taking that to where they don't really need a father, has hurt the family, the African American family. But that goes back because of the mistakes that were made because of slavery, and we're trying to fix it because there are people who realize it and want to try to make things better for black people, and maybe have hurt the black community by doing those things.
There's a black guy inside of Perry. Please, somebody unzip him and let that guy out. No, Perry, you said some of the things that I could not say because I don't think I would have the credibility. I can say it to my black listeners, to my black friends, but when you hear it from a teacher,
right,
of your skin color, white, we say black, white, like. That's what black people are trying to say these days. That's exactly what we're trying to say. And we actually want someone to hear that and not hear that and run and say, well, I got to give you my house and I got to give you my bank account. But just hear that with empathy and say, you know what? I understand what you mean versus what you're saying is, you
I never owned any slaves. Why are you getting mad at me?
That's what you hear. I don't know. Like I saw this on Facebook. Literally what you just said, Perry, this week, friends fighting about that. I've never owned any slaves. And here's the thing is that, and I know we aren't talking about kids, we'll get back to it. It's just such an explosive topic. But here's the thing. We do have some black people that are saying, give me my 40 acres and meal, give me my reparation, give me my land. There are some people that do that. There are some people that are saying that to push the narrative of let's make the playing field even. I think there's more doing that than people are really saying, give me something, government.
But see, that turns off any white person who may be stepping out of their comfort zone. But as soon as they hear, give me something, it's like, wait a second, nobody gave me anything. I didn't own slaves. And I think that narrative, which I think radical ideas bring radical change. Okay.
Yes.
But you're going to lose a lot of people the more radical idea that it is. But so you got to make it's cost benefit. Is it worth it?
You are 100% correct. So as a black guy who understands this, there are certain topics just like the one we're talking about, and I agree with you 100%, Perry, that you have to understand your audience.
Yeah.
And I just can't give everything to my audience. If they're used to coming and watch me and they're used to a 30-minute show, I can't give them an hour show because after the 30 minutes, they're like, yo, we're out of here. And even one of the things that's been pushed now is defund the police.
Right.
Like, I think that's a non-starter to white people because when you say defund the police, you're saying take what white people hear is you're gonna let criminals just run free in the street.
No. You just toned yourself down for a minute. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
I know what you was getting ready to say.
Black people are going to go crazy.
That's exactly what they think. You're about to turn all these black people loose, and we're not going to have any police.
We're not going to have that type of stuff going on around here.
It's the same thing that happened when the verbiage was used by a lot of celebrity black people. We're at war.
Yeah.
I literally saw white people on Facebook, and I'm stereotyping, but it's what I saw. White women on Facebook terrified. Oh my God. What? They are not at war with white people.
Yes.
They are not. I'm going to be honest. We're lucky they're not. We're surprised. I'm surprised they're not because they have every right to be after all of this. Right. But they're not at war. They're not going and knocking on the door and checking to see what color you are in your house and pulling you out and having a word with you. Right. That is not what's occurring. They are at war with a system that is ran by white people.
Yes.
That is built by white people. That is upheld by white people.
Yes.
I just had someone comment just now, and I just saw it pop up in my notifications where she said, I don't agree with you about racism has never been in the church, and racism is not a white person's problem. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I felt like I don't even know. Like that's a whole nother episode, and we'll definitely have to have Perry back.
Yeah, the church has until the church acknowledges its mistakes, we may never get.
But it's offensive. I've got, and y'all both know this because I've had conversations with you separately about this.
We've talked about it on the show.
it's offensive because here Shane is, well, who is he? Who is he to tell me? Like, so that was actually one of my questions. I was going to ask, when is the first time as a kid that you heard someone talk to you about racism that wasn't your parents? Because I'm betting it happened way more often for AT than it did me or Perry.
You know, all you have to do is go to school.
Yeah, but I'm saying somebody had a conversation. When did you ever? So Perry, I'll ask.
Yeah.
When did you ever have a coach talk to you about racism?
Never.
Yeah.
We didn't have any black people around. Why do we have to worry about it? That we didn't have black people on the team. We didn't have black people in the school. And man, when we went to Clarksville, there were going to be some black people on the team. Nobody would say anything. And I think our coaches, it wasn't because they were racist. It was non-existent.
No. So I think we've hit it on something. We've got to figure out how to unravel this whole politically correct like narrative when it comes to speaking about things and speak like you're right. There are some things that we should not, like some ways we have to address things out of respect for those. Mm-hmm. The only people that we're disrespecting when we bring up racism and talk truthfully about race are racists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So why are we protecting the feelings of someone who is about oppressing and holding someone back? So if you're upset, if you have unfriended me, if you don't talk to me, because I've talked about racism in the church, racism in school, racism at home, racism in white, racism in black. If you're offended and you feel like I've called you out, well, then maybe you should do some self-reflection, because I know a lot of people who haven't said anything to me about it. They've not communicated anything to me about it. And at the end of the day, the next question I was going to ask is, when's the first time you ever had somebody in church talk to you about racism?
Never.
How many people in our societies where our communities are built on the pillar of a church, and the one place that we're supposed to go and get the truth, we don't go get it?
Shane, I'm telling you, and I don't want to hog the time here, but I'm telling you right now, if it weren't for Public Enemy, KRS-One, and Boogie Down Productions, Eric B. and Rakim, and people like that, I wouldn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Frozen, what's that? You go and look it up. Farrakhan, who's that? I'm 18, 19.
I'm going to vouch for him. He and I had some commentary during the Jordan documentary every Sunday. He and I were going back and forth watching it together. And when the soundtrack would come on, I actually ended up having to send him the soundtrack on Spotify. And I was like, here, because he's like, oh man, this song and this and
hey,
he's like, man, I'm
just now, I know I look like an old white guy, but I'm telling you, in my teens,
you're an old white guy.
Yeah, okay. So in my teens, my early 20s, I forgot about this. I saw every major rap act in the 80s and early 90s on Muhammad Ali Boulevard in Louisville Gardens. I mean, I was there when Public Enemy broke up and they came back, and Flavor Flav started off with "Don't Believe the Hype." And when I'm in Louisville Gardens, there weren't too many people who looked like me in there. And I would park 2 or 3 blocks away, and I was nervous, but I was nervous because I was in a city, not because I was around black people. I lived in the country, but I would go to these concerts, and there was always a black girl that would be like, "What are you doing here?" And I'd be like, "I just like the music." She's like, "Well, you better be careful." And it just I never was scared because it was a black concert. I was a little apprehensive because I was in a city. But you talk about being in an uncomfortable situation when I'm suddenly the minority by a lot. It is very, very like, okay, I get what black people go through like every day, all the time. But if it hadn't been for those rap groups, nobody would have ever. I mean, you just didn't talk about it.
We need a Scared Straight program.
I'm gonna flip it on you then, Perry.
What's that?
Go ahead, AT. Go ahead.
We need a Scared Straight program. You know how they send the kids to the jails?
See,
we need exactly what Perry went through. Just throw you into a concert.
Yeah, we're going. So it's funny. So it's funny you say that. I asked because I've seen so many people. They say, "Oh, I've never experienced racism." We need to set up a theme park for white people to go to, and they get treated and talked to as if they're black in a racist society.
You ever read the book Black Like Me? I can't remember what the guy.
You're only allowed to do it. You're only allowed, and black people can come too, but they get treated as if they're white. And the people, the actors there are trained to show people and to know to teach, I guess, or to act the opposite of the biases that occur in society.
So one part of the theme park is there, and you can get your picture taken, like being scared or something, like you're on a roller coaster. But where you go to buy your picture, you can also get a rent-a-white.
Yeah,
we got it all.
yeah.
We're gonna sell it.
But that's the thing. So if, like, I don't care who you are watching this, if you interact with today's youth, have the conversation. Quit being chicken shit about worried about losing your job or losing the good players on your team or losing the people sitting in the back of the pew wanting to know why you're talking about blacks again, or worried about the people in the community who might or might not vote for you. Who gives a shit? At the end of the day, doing the right thing is the right thing.
And you'll be rewarded for it. And maybe not short term.
Somebody was telling me.
But I'm saying if you lose your job because of it.
I didn't want the job to begin with. I got some other words that I'll use and we'll have a conversation if that's the case.
Yeah.
I sent this to Perry the other day, AT, and I said, when the equal rights for the LGBTQ community came out, I said, imagine the people who are sitting around right now, pissed off and mad, having to text their friends because somebody else is going to be treated equal. Because we've got to, in 2020, vote with the Supreme Court to say that it's okay that you can't be fired because of the person you choose to love. Imagine that.
And look, I might have mentioned this the first show. If nobody's bothering you,
leave well enough alone.
Leave them alone.
You were told in school, keep your eyes on your own paper. Perry, I know you need to go. So
look, even better when that mind your own business.
Yeah,
like literally, and I hate this, and you know, I minister, and so you know that's one of the things that we preach against. But I'm not going to be going house to house trying to find like that's a Jesus Christ personal and I always go biblical and scripture on these things, so y'all have to forgive me.
I'm grounded with it.
If you really want to follow Jesus, everything he says was, you and I got to figure this thing out. Judge ye that ye be not judged. Get out of other people's business. We got enough business ourselves to try to make it to heaven and to go try to help somebody else make it to heaven. We barely going to be able to get it ourselves. And the Bible says that we all are messing up. We all are sinning.
I don't need the Bible to tell me I'm messing up. I know I am.
Look, I can tell you too. But we don't have enough credibility up top where it really matters, where all this stuff really matters in the heavenly gates. We don't have enough credibility to tell anybody what to do. Now, the Bible specifically said this and this and this and this and this and this is wrong. I can guarantee you that one of those things all of us have done. Let me be very clear. At least one of those things
in the last 2 or 3 days. In the last 2 or 3 days.
Maybe in the last 10 days.
Yeah.
We've all done this stuff. So I think we have to church folks now. Maybe you might not be church and you're watching this. That's okay, cool. I think you probably are a little bit more rational than some of us church folks. Church folks, we got to get out of the point where we are always trying to kill the sinner, because at the end of the day, there is no little sin or no big sin, no strange sin, no weird sin. It's all just sin.
And so that conversation kind of led to race and us talking about race. And I said, and I can't remember the exact context. I said, can you imagine the look of all the faces of all the white people if they were to get to heaven and they get to the gate and there's a line that says white people over here and all the black people get to go in and all the white people that's having to sit there and watch all the black people go in.
Well, Alex Shane and I talk. I tell him that American Christianity is sick. That it's not. You got to go
to bash Christianity or religion. Both of these gentlemen preach in some form or fashion.
I'm a deacon preacher. Like I'm just saying that it is. If you go to a country in which people have to rely on the Lord every second of every day, their faith is so much more authentic. Yeah. We are I've got a job. I got all these things, and I don't have to rely on God until the doctor says something bad. But anyway, heck, you got me off on that. I don't even know.
So let me finish that up, brother D. So we have so much other stuff going on that we do not rely on God. I'm gonna add to that point. So being a real Christian is secondary to what we do.
Well, yes, but here's what the point was, what I was going to make. I told Shane that black people are actually more authentic Christians in the United States because as a Christian, you have to be persecuted. If you're not being persecuted, you're not being a good Christian. And black people are persecuted all the time. White people, we feel like we don't even know what persecution is half the time. Some definition we read in a book. Mm-hmm. But or I'm persecuted because I can't get my.
There's a difference in being persecuted and your feelings hurt.
Yeah. Yes. And we think we're being persecuted because of things that's not persecution. Uh-huh. And I told Shane, we get to heaven, black people in the United States that are Christians, come on in.
Look, we're gonna be shouting. So here's another thing. Let me throw out there too.
All I can tell you is AT. Put a good word for me. When you get
I got you.
Let you know I'm good.
So here's another thing. So I was having a conversation with some dear black friends of mine the other day, and we were talking about this COVID virus. And it just seems to me, and you guys can dispel the stereotype if I'm stereotyping, but it just seems to us that white people are having a rough time having to stay indoors. They're like, yo, we gotta get out. I don't want to wear a face mask. And black people are like, we don't want no parts of the COVID virus. It's killing us more. Sure. But we were talking about how black people are so cool with saying, let me just stay away from this, stay at home. And my dear friend said this, and I agree with him. And maybe it's a stereotype. I think we're okay with it because we're so used to suffering. We're so used to persecution that we're okay with our freedom being challenged at the time.
No, go ahead.
Sound bad, but you're used to being told what to do.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Being told where to go and where not to go. And white people, we don't want to be told what to do.
White people in America, look, I guarantee you, there's some white people pissed off watching this because they're hearing me talk. White people in America, we're used to saying, here's the game, and then we're gonna make up the rules as we go along. Right. It's kind of like playing Uno with some people you've never really played Uno with. They got their own rules, and they're like, wait a second, no, we can stack like the draw four on top of the draw four, and like that's what white people do. So we're not used to when all of a sudden you tell me, what do you mean you want to what? No. Yeah. And then you got men. I could say this. You got a lot of men that the moment you do this, they get emasculated. Oh man, what do you mean? Like my liberty. I can't. Nobody wanted to see your ugly face anyway. Nobody. Why are we talking? I don't understand it. Because rationale tells me science is most of the time right. Yeah. So when science tells me you should do this, guess what? I've even thought about getting one that like makes a comment on the outward side of it to the people who are scared to wear one or embarrassed to wear one, to shame them, to make them look like you're like I'm more of a man than you. Right? So what are we doing? but this goes back to it, and we're talking about kids.
Yeah.
Perry, if you need to go, I know I said it a couple of times. If you need to go,
my kid's playing baseball game.
man, get out of here. We'll have you on again. I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, Alex, I'm glad I met you. Love you, man.
Hey, love you too.
Love you, Shane.
Love you too, buddy. We'll have you back on. I promise.
Yeah, and I love all the people that are watching. And I know I'm picking on white people, but I feel like as a white person, I can, you know. So
I believe all three of us can.
Yeah. Well, we got to evaluate what we're doing. And you know what? I told you the other day, we got to have these conversations, but that doesn't always mean you talking at me and then me listening. All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's got to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll change some of the things I believe, but I got to go. Great talking to you guys.
We'll have you back on.
All right. See ya.
Hey, Shane. So I want to jump back really quick here. So we were talking about the conversation with our kids.
Yep.
So I look at this as a two-step type of thing. So here's the number one, the problem I think that we have when we're trying to tell a teenager about racism. We have already lost the battle. Like, we've already lost the battle. We're trying to tell a 13, a 12, a 10, a 9, even an 8-year-old kid about racism. And here's the thing. I don't think it's just racism that parents aren't having a conversation, a different conversation with their kids. I think we got so far away from even having any type of discussion with kids. I think kids aren't being guided, and that's why I think they're so bad anyway. But anyway, I think that we have got to, from the womb, start to, and it ain't all about a conversation. I think we have to, as Perry was saying, we have to start living a life, letting them see through what we do, how we should react and how we should deal with people of opposite race and opposite, whatever it may be, differences. I think that's something that we have to start doing even before we have the conversation. We have to show that, hey, this is who I am. This is who you should be. And that may be, as Perry was saying, putting them in comfortable situations. Look, maybe your kid does need to go to the privileged all-white school where, you know, they got 6 different buses, you know, just 3 kids to a room, and you got the computers like, maybe your kid doesn't need to go to that plush school. I'm not saying go to the school that has no resources, but maybe that might not be good for your kid. I think we need to look at it as
I agree. I think there's, you and I were talking about fishing the other day.
Yeah.
You don't learn to fish until you go to the water and then you try a bunch of different lures and a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different bait. You don't actually learn without trying.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think as kids, and I can only speak from my own example.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, my daughter, she was 7. We've got a big family. My wife's, all her family is around, aunts, grandmothers, great grandmothers, uncles. Like, my kids are well loved, right? Probably sometimes too much, right? So when birthdays and Christmas comes around, I'm always looking around like, what are y'all doing? Like, what? This is not, we don't know. We're not, we don't need all this. My daughter's birthday, snowstorm hits. She can't do it. Can't have a birthday party because we literally roads, ice everywhere. Can't do it. She comes to us and she's like, oh, it's no big deal. Why don't we just take the money of the stuff that we were going to do for my birthday party and just go buy some supplies and take it over to the animal shelter? Just came out and told us, right? Now, I'm bragging on my daughter. Mm-hmm. That's not something I necessarily sat down and told and taught her. Mm-hmm. But I'm bragging on my wife and I because it leads to an example of how we are about giving to other people. It is a very common conversation for us to have about, did you, like, when my daughter starts school, like, we have all the normal conversations like everybody else does, but then it's the conversations of, well, have you talked to anybody new this year? Mm-hmm. Have you talked to anybody different than you? All these different things. And different doesn't mean skin color. Different could mean I've got neighbors that are Muslim. Mm-hmm. My kids go out and ride their bikes with them. just like they do all the other kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've never even talked to them about Muslim. They know things are different because they see certain things, or when it's time for them to go to their, go to worship, they see them get in the car and do it. Like, they see different things. They have different names. They see these things, but I've never once said, it's always been positive interaction about, what it is. You don't, speaking about it doesn't necessarily sitting your child down and say, did you know white people used to hang and kill and chase and rape and murder black people? That you don't have to have that. Like, at some point you need to have that conversation, but that's not that, talking about racism. And I tell you, I don't know if you saw today, the New York Times bestseller list came out today.
I saw it. You sent that to me.
All books,
nonfiction
books, the top 25, every single one of them in America was about racism. So what that leads me to believe, the majority the book industry is very much like the music industry because of wealth and purchasing influence. A lot of people think, and this is good context for a little bit of background for you and us. A lot of people think, so let's go. I'm gonna share something else.
Okay.
4 of the top 5 songs in America are black songs. They're headlined by black artists, or they have a black. Actually, they all do. They all have a black artist in them, and almost all. And so 4 of the 5, right? For context, because I know the answer, but for our viewers there, who's the majority of the people purchasing music? What is their race?
White folk.
White people. Okay. So if the most popular music in our society is black, if all of these books now that are being purchased, and I tell you, it does my heart an unbelievable. I cannot even convey in words how it makes me feel to know that in American society, a whole bunch of white people are downloading and reading and listening to audiobooks about racism, because that means that what we're seeing, what we're doing, what other people are doing, that means people are opening their ears and opening their eyes and opening their mind to start trying to learn and understand.
Yeah.
They won't have to do this if we start having conversations with our little ones.
Yes. And let me tell you, I'm actually, and I know we are definitely having this difficult conversation, but I want to say something good. I'm actually buoyed, how the word is supposed to be said, meaning I am uplifted in the fact that I do feel like there's a change. And I will say this, although I was talking about how even my young daughters, their next door neighbor in this neighborhood, everyone knows that Alexis and her was friends at some point in time, and now they don't even speak. But I am really excited about this new generation that's here. And that generation is on both sides, black and white. That generation is looking at the old fogies like us and the older fogies like those that are older than us, and the older fogies that have died and gone. They're looking at us like we really messed this world up. And they're looking at us like we're messed this world up. And it's more of them coming, and it's more of us dying off. The world is going to change regardless of whether we want to keep these stereotypes, whether we want to sit around and be racist, whether we want to still be a part. Us old fogies, we're going to die out, and this world is going to change, and we can fight against it. We can fuss against it. There's some things that socially that I typically, not racial, but I typically don't agree with. But I do realize that this is what I feel is definitely going to change, because they are moving in a totally different step. They have a whole different mindset. They are more accepting of other races, of other beliefs, of other differences. They are at the point, because of us, Shane, they're at the point where they was quiet and now they're vocal. And I don't think I've seen these little movements over my 46 years, but I don't think.
So I'm gonna flip this.
Yeah.
In 2 ways. I'm gonna flip it because I pay attention to trends. It's just part naturally, inherently how I move in life. Am I correct? And again, I'm sure it comes off like Shane just hates the church. I'm using context. There's been a trend over the last 10 to 15 years of young people not staying in the church and showing up in a traditional manner, right? They get to a certain age and they get disengaged, right? So how I have interpreted that, and I've read a bunch of different conservative and liberal, they all say the same thing. Because you're not speaking real world things and putting it in a way to where they're like they can see through it. A 14, 15, 16-year-old kid knows way more about the real world than they did ever in any point in time in history. You can't fool them. You can't bluff them. I'm going to share it with you in a different way. I found out 12 months ago that Saudi Arabia recently opened up their country to tourist visas. Shane being the guy that I am, I run into the fire. I asked 10, 15 people, hey, would you ever travel to Saudi Arabia? Well, Lord, no. Why would I go there? What would I? No, I wouldn't. No. I'm looking at them like, why? Why would you not go? So I start doing some marketing stuff and start connecting with a bunch of people in Saudi Arabia. It will blow your mind how open and how welcoming those people are to find out that an American who looks like me wants to come over and talk and share my story and share my journey. And what I found was 70% of their population is under 30 years old. And that is why a lot of these things, like now you can go out and be a woman uncovered and not have to be with your husband out in public. You can be a guy wearing regular clothes with tattoos showing now in public and nothing happens to you. You can go to the movie theater and sit with your wife at a movie and not have to men go in one and women go in the other. Right? Because the young people see it and they're not, you can't stop them. You can oppress them. You can hold them back. You can tell them they don't get it. You can tell them they don't understand. You can tell them that they're not being Muslim enough or Christian enough. And you can do all those things. But when you strip all these labels away, their heart is what their heart is. And I'll tell you something, and it just hit me. I had a conversation with my daughter last night about something that probably in a context that a lot of Black parents have to have with their kids. And my daughter is having an issue with some, I won't give a whole bunch of context to it because it's her story, but basically I love X, Y, and Z. I miss X, Y, and Z. I want to see them. You know, why don't they come around more? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? So I had to lay down and have a conversation with my daughter and said, look, you never, ever stop loving and caring about people. But the one thing about life is you cannot control if somebody loves or cares or respects you back. Right? So even though like you can't not love them, you can't not love. All what you are an amazing person. You are an unbelievable soul. Never, ever stop loving people and caring about people, because there are going to be some people who don't get it. There are going to be some people who don't know how to receive it. There are going to be some people who call you names for doing it. But love, and if you love people, and we use love as a broad term, you know, it's family. So she does know what that love is. But if we just get with these kids and we say, and that's why I wanted to know, when did you ever have a coach tell you? As a coach, if you're listening to this, you should be you absolutely should be having conversations about race. Make it part. You know how many white people right now are probably tired? Shane, these riots and these things happened 3 weeks ago. Why are you still posting about racism? Oh man, I can't believe. There's no telling how many people who've muted me on Facebook. No telling. because because again, it's not affecting them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They can drive downtown Louisville now, and there's no rioting and no protesting now. I can drive around, so it doesn't affect me anymore. My life, I can go back to being in my white bubble and moving along. And we talked about it the other day. Is we've got to understand as parents and as adults that, and I can only speak for white kids. White kids have to know that there is a difference.
Yes.
I think sometimes, and I think it'd be really good for us to have a psychologist on here to talk about some different things, because I would like to know if there's a psychology among white parents. And actually, if you're watching this and if you're white, I'd love for you to comment down below whenever you watch this or DM me. I would like to know if you're afraid to bring up racism to your kids. Is there a part where you're afraid that it's going to make them racist? Is it kind of like, well, I don't want to talk to my kids about sex because then they'll want to have sex. No, they're 12 years old. They're thinking about it. It's on their mind, right? It's unfortunately they're built that way. Yeah. Right. So if it's like, so go back to social media, and if you got something you want to interject with, by all means, stop me. Otherwise, I'm gonna run with you.
No, go ahead, because I think it's important.
Social media. So this is good. It all ties in. Social media. Talking about social media to your kids is the same thing. Talking about racism to your kids is the same thing as talking about gun safety to your kids. And what I used to tell people, and I'm glad I've had this conversation, because I'm gonna add a layer to it in my repertoire here. But when we speak, I used to tell parents in a room, I say, raise a hand if how many of you have one of these, right? All the kids raised their hand. I said, all right, parents, when's the last time you went through your child's phone? Well, they're looking like, why would I invade their privacy? Why would I okay, it's okay. So let me ask you another. How many of you in here allow your child to walk around with a gun every day? And they look at me like, well, none of us. I said, okay, let's assume you do. At the very least, if you were going to give your child a gun to walk around with every day, at the very least, you would do so, and you would teach them how to use it and not hurt themselves or hurt others. But yet, when we allow them to get on this, I don't want to know about it. I don't mess with that Facebook stuff. Or I ain't messing with that TikTok stuff. That's not me. That's, I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it. Mostly because they're afraid of judgment of one of their friends finding out that they're on it. I mean, my wife's grandmother, who's 95 years old, is on Facebook. So you can be on Facebook. Yeah. So let's add racism into that. You got I do believe that a majority of white people understand and know that racism exists. Racist or not, they know it exists. It is an unbelievably harmful and dangerous thing. I would argue that it is just as dangerous as anything we will encounter in society that can divide and cause serious societal damage. So if you know they're going to encounter it, why not address it? I would much rather my daughter hear about sex, violence, racism, any of these things from me than from someone else. Because believe you me, if you're not talking to your kids about racism, someone else is, either directly or indirectly.
Well, and that goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. I think our generation, and I'm gonna put it on us, our generation's got to the point where we don't really have those conversations. And that's why we don't have conversations. We just kind of think, well, they should know, and they see enough stuff and they're gonna figure it out. And we're so busy these days, there is no more family dinners, there's no more family prayer. So when do you have the time to sit down and do it? Because life is just going so fast. And so I don't think we have the time to sit down and talk anymore. We don't take the time to sit down and talk anymore. And our children learn from social media. And I can tell you, just 2 weeks of being on TikTok, I have seen everything on TikTok. There is nothing on TikTok that they can or cannot encounter on TikTok. There's an Instagram, there's a Twitter, all that stuff's going on. And so I think when you're raising your kid to the point where I'm living a life where, and I hate to just keep bringing Jesus into this, but I'm living a life that God is approving of, and that I'm showing them through love for other people, through my selflessness, through my purging of my own emotions and satisfactions, then I think you can say my life speaks so much so that my kids can understand it. And that's where you were talking a little bit earlier, like I didn't have to tell my daughter to be caring for animals. She's already seen that. But
they know where I stand.
Yes.
That's why silence is dangerous. Because kids assume.
Exactly.
Kids assume. Mm-hmm. That's why I talk about church leadership or school leadership or community leadership. Kids are looking at you and saying, well, all these black people over here talking about racism and nobody's ever talked to me about it. And this person that I look up to, they're not talking about it. So like,
what is it?
It ain't real. Like it ain't real. It ain't real. But it's very real.
I go to school, we wear the same clothes. Jimmy goes home, I go home. I don't know anything, like you said. I don't know about Jim Crow and all. I know none of that stuff. So
I've never heard the N-word. I've never heard somebody use that other than a movie.
Yep. And so then when all of a sudden it hits your doorstep, and it's not pleasant when it hits your doorstep, the first thing for you to do is to revert back to, what are they talking about?
You know when the worst time to have to talk to your kids and give them the sex talk and talk about using protection
is when they're pregnant or when they already started.
Yep.
Mercy.
It's too late. It's too late. So we got to have the conversation. Listen, if we're going to believe science that tells us kids learn the most and can learn different languages, they can learn as many languages as you can teach them before they're 7 years old. But you think we're going to wait until you're an adult to have a conversation about something as heinous and ugly and gross and ignorant as racism? We're fooling ourselves.
We're fooling ourselves.
And I tell you what, somebody will make billions of dollars if they start a service we talked about, and I'm saying it tongue in cheek. So for those of you that have seen me or heard me make the joke, rent a white, in this scenario, somebody's going to make a bunch of money by having a group of really distinguished black and white people on both sides, and to go and say, I want to pay for you to come in, or I want to pay for you to sit down and have some conversations with my kid about racism.
Yeah. If they do it for mail order brides, man, they'll be able to take, somebody's going to package it.
So if what I should do, and I tell you what, I'd love for you and I to figure out a way where we coordinate a video call where I talk to your kids and they can ask me questions about racism.
That'd be cool.
And my 9 and my 13-year-old can do the same with you. And we don't necessarily need to record it, but then we can come back and we can talk about what happened, because those are the things that need to occur. And if we're not uncomfortable, it's not uncomfortable. I'm not, listen, I can sit here and joke about Rena White. I'm not concerned with somebody taking that clip and sending it out to the world, because the first news station that runs and says Shane's racist, I've got 753,000 black people that are going to come to my defense and say, you're an idiot. You have no idea what you're talking about, because of how I've lived my life. And it's not, I don't have to go around and tell you I'm not racist. When you and I met, I didn't have to tell you I didn't have to give you a speech about how many black friends I have and that I was doing this. No, because I'm not, that's not, I don't like, it's not like, it's not part of how you don't have to know.
Yeah.
Right. Like
well, you shouldn't have to market yourself as a non-racist. It should just
yes.
come off the pores.
Yes. And I'm sure that's probably what this looks like for Shane.
Mm-hmm.
Shane's sharing all this stuff. Why is he bragging about not being racist? Or why is he having to talk? I'm sure that's how it's looking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My motives behind this are because it is only white people who are going to end the process of racism. I can't fix black on black crime. I can't fix black racism until white racism is fixed, because then the system will then allow equal power and equal influence to people of all color. So then all of it gets fixed.
Boy, that was just a great closing statement, man. I should have. We did video this, right?
Yeah, we record them. We record them. But
I mean, that was just such a. Did you have that written down? Because that was just such a great statement.
I'm just a very eloquent white guy. I'm just an eloquent white guy, right? So, but like, I want to start a trend. Like, I want to figure out how we can do this. I want to figure out how we can have a black family and a white family, and have those conversations across multiple. I want to figure this out. I want to figure this out.
Figure it out, because it is an interesting proposition to mix it up a little bit. So figure that out. Because I think that would be interesting.
Because imagine the impact it'll have on those kids, though.
Yeah,
I don't want my kid to ever, like. Here's how I look. Like, so maybe this is why. Here's why listen. We all stand. I think 99.9% of the people stand on the exact same place when it comes to police. Most of them have good intentions. Most of them are doing their job. Most of them are overworked. They're underpaid. They're undertrained. We know all of that. It is a job that most of us don't want to go do. So I don't negatively communicate or verbalize anything negative about cops. No different than I do anyone else, because so here's why I've done it. I never want my children to ever be in any environment, black, white, Muslim, gay, straight, police, no police. I don't want them ever to be in an environment and feel threatened, violated, concerned, or scared, and not think that they can't look around and look for someone who will be there to help them, or to be there to come to their, meaning if my house catches on fire, I'm not concerned that if the black family is the first one to greet them, that they're going to be scared and wonder that's going to add more fear to them.
Yeah.
Or if they get lost, I want them to know that they can walk up to the black guy and say, hey, not sit there and be scared longer until they see a white person.
Or if they're just walking down the street, that they feel like they got to clutch their purse because they're about to walk past.
Yes. And listen, we all have prejudices. AT and I can walk. Listen, when I tell you, as a white guy, I can go walk around. I've been there, Runyon Avenue, 8 Mile, 9 Mile in Detroit. There are no white people on one side of the railroad tracks. They don't exist. I can go there and walk around. There are people there that if I were to encounter at night, I'm not racist. I'm probably going to walk on the other side of the street because I understand the environment that I'm in, and I wouldn't put myself in any situation I don't need to be in. Right? So there's a difference in knowing if I walk down the street and every black person that I see, I do it. That's the issue. That's the issue.
Yes.
But let's make sure and have that adult conversation to know that everybody is good.
Yeah.
Everybody
until they prove themselves otherwise.
Yes. Listen, I've had a gun pulled on me 3 times in my life. All 3 of them were white guys. I don't hate white people because black people or white people pulled a gun on me.
You hate that guy because he was a bad guy.
Yes. The only racist slang terms that have ever been used towards me, all from white people. I don't hate, and I'm talking about, I've been called, white people can be called racist names by white people. For those of you who are unaware, right? My own mother called me one time. So in these things of, I tell you what, I'm actually going to share a story with you.
Okay.
And I've done this. I'm sharing my experience. So those of you that watch this, I hope you understand. I've told about my life. I grew up in an environment that was not the greatest. I moved 17 times the first 18 years of my life. I dealt with physical abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse. It was not a great home situation. I would go to school in elementary school, and I would do everything I could to get out of class so I could go and sleep, because a lot of nights I would hear fighting, screaming, yelling, abuse, different things going on in my house. I couldn't sleep. Dog tired, didn't want to be there, had no interest in school whatsoever. I'd go to school. And I'm peeling the curtain back a little bit, one, because I want you to see that maybe you can't relate to me because Shane's got some swagger and some juice about him, and AT's calling me black and these different things and joking. But when you peel all of that away, I am very much as real and as raw and as human as any of us, no matter your color. So I went through those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to share some context because of why I'm sharing this story about why Shane has such an understanding of black community and culture.
Mm.
And I'm actually going to share a long post about this when we're done tonight.
Okay.
We had a custodian in our school. His name was Jerry Satterfield.
Satterfield.
Black guy. Now, we didn't have marker boards and smart boards. We had chalkboards. And I remember in first grade, I was attending Potter Gray Elementary School. One of the very first weeks in school, the teacher said, "Hey, does anybody want to collect all the erasers and take them to Mr. Satterfield to get them cleaned?" At this stage, I had no idea, but kids, if you're listening, we used to have eraser boards, and then you had an eraser. Well, erasing all day collects the dust. Well, there's this giant vacuum in the custodian's closet that you would run them across, and it would suck the dust out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you take it back and you reuse it. So I took it to him. And something about my engagement with him and my interaction with him became very natural. And I got in trouble because I stayed with him and we were just talking. Now, here this black guy, and it's funny how this story actually comes full circle. Because I ended up playing high school basketball with his son. And we're very cordial and good friends, right? But I didn't know any of this at the time. So we're going through this, and after about once or twice a week, he would come in and he would go around at the end of the day and say, "Hey, can I have Shane? He can come help me collect the trash from the rooms and do this." I would love it. And maybe 3 or 4 times into it, we're just talking. And I don't know if he knew I don't know if he knew he was doing it, or that's just how he was, and it was just naturally who he was, or both. But I remember a conversation, and he said something to me. He said, he said, "I think me and you are a lot alike."
Mm.
I didn't think anything of it. I can remember like this was yesterday. And I said, "You think so?" Now, at this point, Jerry's probably going to kill him. His son's name is Jerry too. So Jerry's going to kill me if he hears this, but his dad had a perm. So, he had the perm, and he was just a regular country talking black guy.
Mm.
And I'm hearing him, and I'm like, he says, "We're not much." And I'm looking at him like, "Well, we look different. Like, what do you, you're older than me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
And he said things aren't the greatest. I can't remember how he worded it, but like insinuating like things aren't great at home. And I said, well, no, sir. I said, but they'll be okay. And I'm telling you, man, I'll never forget this. We're walking down the hall. He reached over and put his hand on my shoulder. And he said, you know what? He said, little buddy, things are going to be all right. And he would come, and it became a thing. Like he would come get me out of class. Like on the normal. So there had to have been a point where like that was my guy. Mm-hmm. Like I had so many conversations about different things, about random things as a kid. I remember talking about our favorite potato chips. Funyuns just came out at the time. I can remember like it was yesterday. Just these different things, man. And and I've got other stories like that that were positive role models for me or positive influence for me that were black. And I didn't get them from white males necessarily, or they weren't as proactive or as intentional with their interaction with me. So, I get it. I know I'm different. I know, maybe it's just always been that way, but that for me stood out. So there's a lot of instances like that through my life that the first teacher to ever put their arm around me and give me a hug and tell me they love me and tell me they have my back was black. It was my counselor. Like the first teacher to ever pull me aside in high school and tell me, hey, and I'm going to use the exact words he used. He said, if you don't get your shit together and get your head out of your hind end, you're going to be living somewhere where you don't want to live. Mm-hmm. So I need you to stick with me and follow me, and let's do this thing together. Mm-hmm. I never had a white teacher do that. He was black. It was my assistant principal, Ricardo Cisney. Mm-hmm. And for me, I had these different influences where I got in the car business. Mm-hmm. I had different people I worked with, and I got hired by a white guy and all those different things, but I worked for one of the largest minority auto dealers in the country. He sat on the Federal Reserve span with Alan Greenspan. He owned the fueling rights to the local airport. He was on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine. This was a guy, I had the key. I had the code to get in his house. Mm-hmm. I had the code to get into the back gate of the airport, to get into the hangar where he had 2 jets. All these things, and we would have conversations, and a lot of people didn't know we had these conversations. He and I would interact in a very personal way that would make a lot of people uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. They're like, Shane, what are you doing? You're going to get fired talking to him like this. But they didn't know. Most of the people that I work with did not know, but he, for whatever reason, pulled me aside. He invited me to eat at a place called Rafferty's one day, and we sat and talked, and he just talked about how much like he wanted to be a normal person. He did everybody always coming up to him and this and like, and we were talking like it was just a natural thing. I hate it. He ended up passing away due to an accident, but I never actually reached out to him and communicated with him. But yeah, it's a lot of those stories. There's a lot of those stories as a kid that made an impact on me.
Let me say this, Shane, because as I hear your stories, the thing that really jumps out to me is that love can come from anywhere. I mean, you talk about a guy who's basically a janitor that showed you love, and I'm even looking past race now.
Yep.
About a guy who's a janitor that showed love and made a big impact on your life. Then you talk about a guy who's got just buku money. I mean, 2 jets. I mean, I'm doing good if I can just get a first class seat on American Airlines. Yeah. You know, you showed your love and made an impact on your life. Let me say this for those of you who are watching now, who will be watching later. I think one of the things that we have wanted to do with our discussions, and I hope that you are getting this, is to first show that everybody, regardless of your skin, we're just all people. Absolutely. We basically have the same fears. We basically have the same dreams. We basically have the same goals. I mean, there's bad apples on both sides that just that have issues. But most of us, we're basically the same people. I want my kids to get into a good college, just like the people that paid all that money for them, those superstars that paid all that money. I want them to get into a good college too. And if I even had the money, maybe I don't know, maybe I would, do something scrupulous to get them into the school, to give them some type of privilege, some type of head start. So I think what we've been trying to do, even though it may seem sometimes that we're fussing or we're picking, I think what we try to do is have a conversation where we can actually talk about the ills of our community, the ills of each and every one of our hearts, and also just so the human side of that. A white person like Shane could have a black person impact him. A black guy like me can have the same impacts from someone of a different race, and just show there's a human side to everybody. And the thing that cures all of these ailments is love. If someone says, well, what is the one cure? What is the one medicinal cure? What is the one thing that could kill racism? It comes down to love. And I think we got to figure out how to be able to, as the Bible says, love thyself as we love thy neighbor as we love ourselves. And that's the greatest thing. I was doing a counseling session on Sunday for a white couple that is getting close to being married. We were in our last session, and I read 1 Corinthians 13. And when I was young, I went to a Christian school, Bible school, through my first couple of years. And I had to recite 1 Corinthians 13. And for those who know the Bible, they know that is a scripture on charity. But my teacher wanted us to take the word charity out and switch it for love. And it talks about all these different things. And it talks about the prophecies will come, this will come, and this is going to go, times are going to change. But the one thing that will stand, the one thing that is greater than faith and hope and all these things, this is what Christ was saying, was love. And I think we got to get to a point where, regardless of what we see on TV, regardless of the way we were raised, regardless of our stereotypes, regardless of what somebody done to me last year, regardless of all the things that we're influenced by, that we got to get to a point where we just love. When I can just have a true, unfiltered, unfeathered love for just mankind, then I'm actually now I'm doing the good work. I'm living the good life that Christ, he tried to show us in his 33 years on earth. And then I can get to a point, when I get to that point where I love everybody, then I get to the point where I can sprout wings and I can then start flying. But until that point, until I've got to the point where I can love someone, then I need to be practicing. I need to be figuring out. I need to be trying to get to a point where I can just love. And so I like what you said, man. It just hit me as you was telling it, and it almost brought a tear to my heart to hear you just talk about how as a kid, and the thing that jumped in my mind too was when this old commercial, when Mean Joe Green was walking through that commercial for Pepsi, I think it was, a Coca-Cola, one or two, and the little white kid walks up to Mean Joe Green. It looked like Mean Joe Green and the Steelers might have had a bad day because he was just big old Mean Joe was walking through the tunnel, going to the locker room, and he was just barely walking. He was looking sad. Maybe they had lost the game. I'm not sure. But the little kid walks up to Mean Joe Green. The white kid now walks up to him, and Mean Joe Green is hovering above him, and he reluctantly, scared of Mean Joe, like I don't know what Mean Joe's gonna say. He hands him the Pepsi, and Mean Joe grabs the Pepsi, and I think he puts his hands on his head, and he shows him that, hey kid, thanks.
Yeah.
What a symbol!
It's a beautiful thing, and we'll wrap it up. But his son Jerry. So when I was a freshman in high school, his son was our only senior on the high school team that year.
Mean Joe?
What's that?
Mean Joe Green or
no, the custodian's son. So his son ended up being the only senior on our high school team when I was a freshman. So I played varsity when I played, and he was our only senior. And I mean, he was in a lot of ways the same way. He was the same kind of person. He'd look out. He was tough on me. He demanded a lot, but very compassionate. Even still to this day, man, we have a great relationship, and he's a great dad. He's an absolute jewel. He's a jewel of a human being, and there's no doubt he got that from his dad. There is no doubt. There's no doubt. AT, I love you.
Love you too, big guy.
Man, this has been great. We'll see you again next week.
Yes, sir. We'll be back next week, man. Folks, love each other. Let's just love. Let's
love each other and talk. Just love each other and talk.
Yeah, let's not be upset with each other. Let's just love. And look, you might say, well, one person loving ain't gonna change the world. Just do your part. Just do your one love part, and you never know that one person could be that experience Shane had. That one person. That's all you need. That's all you need.
Absolutely. I love you, buddy, and I'll be in touch soon.
All right, be good. Love you too.
All right, brother.
All right.